Welcome back to the Manifesting Health series. I'm Curry Boardlawn, your host for this discussion. We're excited to have Todd Angelucci join us with this special episode, Your Engagement Has Influence. Todd is a passionate advocate for men in nursing and a leader in transformational self-leadership mentorship. From Army medic to critical care nurse, corporate healthcare leader, and now mentor, Todd's journey is a testament to resilience and purpose. A brain tumor survivor, he now helps professionals break from their limiting belief to master their thinking habits and to lead with authenticity in both life and career. Welcome, Todd.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it, Curry.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining us. As we get started, I want you to spend a little time telling us about yourself for briefly, and how did you get in this space of advocacy and mentorship for men and for men in nursing?
Oh, thanks for asking. I've always been passionate about really helping people, and it really wasn't, I started helping a lot of different people in health and wellness space, and I just started to really dive deeper into my own journey. And I think some of the things that came up in my journey like really opened the door for the men's space and men in nursing and men in general. I think if we have challenges that we're dealing with from society standpoint, I've learned in my own journey, why wouldn't we have this in the nursing profession for sure? So that it just kind of was an inspiration and I just went with it.
No, that's good. I enjoy hearing how, in some of our guests that we've had over the time, to really talk about how we play an influence in others and how can we influence and how does our engagement play into that influence. So can we talk a little bit about that space to be in, meaning that, there's a lot of people who don't even know where to start. There's a lot of people who don't even understand how engagement in whether it be a professional organization or local community efforts or in a personal journey, how does that help influence others and our colleagues?
That's great. I think engagement just starts with this feeling inside of like, hey, there's something here. I'm not sure what it's about, but let me start to explore it. And around a different, whatever topic or whatever passion drives you. I love, your organization with the men in nursing, right? And I was just inspired to, and I just started to open up and have a conversation. I think as men, we're often silent and we often don't talk about things. And I think what inspired me is just to start to have the conversation, to feel a little comfortable, and to walk and take certain steps. And it just takes one step. Like, for example, you talked about an organization. A lot of people may not be joining organizations. They may not be seeing what's going on. And maybe that one step is joining and then reaching out and talking to somebody from there. I think it's that simple as far as engagement. And then allow it to grow. I think we're so afraid of, hey, offending somebody or what we're feeling or all that. There's an authentic way to really approach this. And this is what I like to talk about with people.
You bring up a good point about a couple of different things is taking that first step, but also that authenticity of having an opportunity to feel in a safe space where I can share my opinion or my professional goals and so forth. But let's take a step back to a little bit. You mentioned about the professional organization piece, about taking that first step and getting involved and you just becoming a member. Can you talk a little bit about, and I know all organizations are very different in their focus, they have different missions and so forth. In general, professional organizations, can you talk more about how there's a lot of opportunities for engagement and influence within those organizations?
Yeah, I think what I love about organizations in general, and I used to be part of more, but it was just it really depended on what my passion was. And I've loved talking with your organization because I feel like the engagement is about you guys are really wanting to give back. You guys are really wanting to support the person that, the frontline nurse, the nursing student, all of these these types of things. And I think that's really what it requires, just learning about them and talking to one person. I've talked to a couple people in your organization, just amazing people. And that really starts and gives inspiration for you to grow in your career, grow in your life, and meet connections that'll help you ultimately grow for sure.
So you mentioned those connections, which this is true, and I thank you for that. The our organization, the American Association for Men in Nursing, really does try, and we've been around for quite some time. Tries to not only give it back to our community, give it back to our members, but also find ways for engagement. And so with that's particularly within our organization, we have different committees and groups and boards, and we have the conferencing and so forth, different special activities and stuff. How else, what are some other ways that, nurses can become more engaged, specifically in areas of like interest? For example, for men in nursing or any other nursing, ethnic groups or whatever, how can, beyond the first step, once you're in that first step, how can you look for ways to improve your voice within that space?
That's a great question. It's a powerful question because it takes having a belief in what really matters in here. I think I always talk about inside because this is about us, right? It's about having the courageous conversation of saying how you feel in those forums and identifying and authentically connecting like, hey, are you feeling this way? Can we talk about this? Can we get involved? Hey, how about we do this? Like, for example, I'm doing, we're doing this, right? This is one of those examples. One of those is like, hey, I want to set up a forum that we could get on a Zoom and we could start talking about this and we could share and we could bring that in. That's something I'm passionate about. But it's engaging social media in a way that you feel good about, in a way, in a platform that really makes sense to what you're doing and getting some guidance and I'll use the word mentorship to even doing that because that is something that may be out of people's comfort zones, but it's taking action in spite of being uncomfortable because it's a little uncomfortable, especially today.
So true, so very true, especially within social media space. Social media often gets both bad and good raps in that, and it's got its place to help communication sharing, organizational building, but also to create a community of like-minded people, as what you're talking about, to create that like-mindedness in this societal group, this subgroup within our communities that are in that same space. Now, again, there's also the negative side, and then you also try to avoid that because it can be very damaging for your own self, but also for the community. So, let's talk about a little bit about mentoring. You mentioned mentoring just a minute ago. How can mentoring play a role in this for us as those who have more experience? How can we now use that mentoring ability to help influence the next generation?
Oh, we could do a whole long conversation on that. I
And
think
that's a
what
setup.
meant
We'll probably have another one, so we'll talk more about that later.
Yeah, I think we're gonna lead into that. I think honestly, mentoring, I think what we have to start to do, and this is kind of my inside approach, and it's kind of like this internal thing, is we need to understand and connect with ourselves and understand some of our own challenges, even as the leaders, right? And understand what a person needs, like maybe a young male nursing student getting into that. And what we do is we start to step alongside of them and we start to walk and listen. We
Right,
listen to them. We connect with them. We want to understand, not that we're telling them what to do or giving them advice. We want to learn and we want to help guide them or offer them questions to think differently
right.
or to really support what they're doing. I love that connection in that way. That's what mentorship, in my opinion, really starts from this deep connection and allowing our knowledge or wisdom and allowing it to play out in a way that's authentic and actually encourages somebody to look at themselves and want to grow. That's my take on that.
Right. And, there's lots of data out there to help support that very thing, which you talk about, that behavior and that influence on a one-on-one or a small, small group level far outweighs what you can gain or potentially gain from 2,000 members of a conference all together in a very large space. It gives, like you say, that safe space to be authentic, to be yourself and say, what are your concerns? What are you thinking about? But here's also ways, because a lot of people, they're in these spaces very new, and how do I get to that level? How do I get to where you are, and do it patiently? So, but I really do appreciate it. You've got a very unique background in history, that can lend a great way to say we all have our ups and downs, we all have our obstacles. What drove you to be able to get past a lot of your obstacles and say, now I want to help? How did you become that authentic person to say, I have a message and I would like to share that message to hopefully influence others?
The biggest thing that I did was I started to invest in myself. And I think nurses in general have a real problem. I shouldn't say a problem. They have a challenge. They often don't invest in the biggest resource that they should. We talk
Why do
about
you think
investing.
so? Why do you think that is, though?
I think there's a lot of traumas
Mm,
that, we come to the field with them,
right, right,
personal wounds, right?
right,
And then in the field, we experience it, right?
right.
There's toxic work environments, there's
Mm,
moral injury, there's all this stuff that we don't really know how to process.
right,
And we think that we compartmentalize it in a box, like this is work. But everything is a playground in our lives. Like what happens in our lives, in our personal
right,
lives,
right,
it's all together. And so what I've found is that my journey had inspired me to go inward. I learned a lot. I got a coach, I invested, and then I learned some habits of thinking through a process that I utilized that helped me to see things in a very different and unique way. And then it enabled me to connect more deeply with myself, which allows me to connect deeply with others.
right.
To one of the points that you talked about in this mentorship and people with group, like I think one of the things that inspired me with the men was I looked at my own stuff. Like, I had a coach point out, like, maybe, take a look at this. And I've explored. So I created a private men's mentorship group, and I've watched men just start to grow just by having a place to talk about it. Like, hey, you do that too, or that occurs for you. And being around male energy is important because we're often around a lot of female energy. Not that it's
Right.
bad.
Right.
We need our brothers.
Right, exactly. And you want to be in a community where, again, you feel like you can open up more. So in our last couple of seconds together, what's the big takeaway message that you have for our listeners or our viewers?
My big takeaway is really start to look at yourself, like look internally here. What inspires you? Where do you feel a little stuck? What can you do? Invest in yourself, get involved. It happens out here. It happens by connecting with others and starting to learn and be a learner and be curious about a lot of things because our minds make us think that things are a certain way and they're not. So I encourage just take steps, even though you feel afraid.
So Todd, I want to thank you again for your time and sharing your authentic message. And also, we're going to talk more about mentoring on another episode. But I really, again, appreciate your time and sharing your expertise, but also creating a space that we can have a conversation like this to help with others who might be struggling. So thank you again for your time, and thank you all for listening today. Look forward to
Thank
seeing you
you.
next time.